Still learning all this stuff. Okay, so Sheila is like to go first. Sheila McMullin is a 2020 Arts for the LA Arts Delegate and the author of Daughterarium. The link is up there in the chat if you haven't looked at the chat yet. Selected by Daniel Borotsky for Cleveland State University Poetry Center's first book prize. As a youth organizer and literary coach, she co-edited what she was telling about earlier, The Day Tejon Got Shot, the Black Lives Matter novel and stories written by middle school writers from the Beacon House Community Center in Northeast Washington, D.C., and Humans of Baloo, the nonfiction collection of high school students living in Anacostia who know a different side of Washington, D.C., both from Shout Moose Press. She currently resides in Los Angeles, California, where she is apprenticed under Marissa, I think I'm going to mess up this name, very sorry, Marissa Marinowska at the Gaia School of School of Healing and Earth Education, is practicing sacred plant medicine and alchemizing plants into paper. How cool. For more on our publications, visit moonspitpoetry.com. And if you'd like to chat, you can always be grateful to hear from you through moonspitpoetry@gmail.com. So Sheila, give me 1 second to spotlight you and take it away.
All right. Oh, there's my face. So just wanted to, before I start, just take a moment to thank Christy and Alan so much for organizing these readings. They've had several so far, and I know we'll continue to have more. And it's a really beautiful opportunity to be in community with folks and infuse some art into our days. And I just wanted to take a moment too. I'm actually a little overwhelmed. I'm seeing so many friends hop onto the Zoom. And so I just wanted to take a moment to scroll through and just look at your faces and love on you for a moment and say hi and just be so grateful to be with you right now. I know it's been overwhelming few months. And so I'm so grateful to be with you. And today too, I wanted just to say happy 2-month anniversary to my husband, Eric, who's online. We decided to move forward nonetheless and got married on the summer solstice and have been really excited to start that new journey together. So what do you read during this time? I really don't know. And so I've been, I decided what I wanted to do was revisit an older poem to see how that fits in today's context. And then I wanted to read you all brand new stuff. So thank you for the opportunity to read new things. No one has heard any of these for the most part, and I actually haven't written or read poetry in a while, so I'm just really appreciative of this space. So the first poem will be a revisiting, and then my second poem will be, I will eventually translate it into a comic, but I think I was on the edge of my own sanity during this pandemic, and I came up with just, I don't know, this little weird guy. I'm not really known for my humor and poetry, so this is something different. And sometimes the only way through is wearing, you know, a clown mask. The next poem I'll read, I had one of my dear friends gave birth just about a month ago, and so this is for the baby. Then I'll read a short prayer, and my last poem will be brand new, like 24 hours old. All right. If I should rename myself. If I should rename myself, I am if. The distance between claim and shadow, brighter than the light through my mouth, renamed as a bud, standing as a man across from me, 2 cupped hands over his eyes. We were in love once, in our other life, when it was our roots that were exposed and our trunk that was submerged, when I was a girl and then a living girl, when I had touched my own palm to my forehead, and that is what healed me, If I had tried harder, maybe I could have been something more experimental. If I would have swallowed the light, made swords out of my throat, a belly of wakefulness, my body, a wall between me and what is behind me, always tuning shadows, turning to be followed. If I could summarize all the sounds from my past, it would sound like shuffling feet and coughs. If I could mimic all the shuffling sounds in my head, it would sound like this. Empty streets. Just when we thought it couldn't get any worse, a giant egg appeared at the edge of the Pacific. Perfect views from Ocean Avenue, and for weeks it just sat there. Then today, it cracked. Most people have fled the shoreline cities fearing Godzilla. I personally think it will hatch a million billion spiders who will drown immediately upon impact. So we've decided to stay. Take advantage of the empty streets for as long as possible. Thank you for Ramona. Every day we lit incense for you, an offering to travel the wind from California to Pennsylvania. The world is always changing. We were all born into uncharted territory. You would be no exception, except as your mother and father waited for you and wonder if we have evolved enough, grown our capacity to take stock of what we have, who we have lost. You are here now, a gift to this day, and healthy, a reminder that life is still happening and we are still moving. This pandemic, this historic rising of resistance, these fires, these heat waves, these droughts will shape the narrative of your birth. But you define your own way, okay? Keep close to the eternity of the other side, the confidence of the infinite. You make us new. Every moment a learning, a memory, a gathering. You were born and knew exactly what to do. What was that like? What do you remember? Does the other side have jellyfish? Did you know it would always be us? Were we always together? Did you meet your great-great-grandparents? What news do they have for us? Pray for rain. Elise, this one's for you. The jacarandas are releasing their flowers. The sidewalk ahead, a purple garland. Each step lifts a forager to eyesight. Bees covered with nectar from blossoms. We're heading down the same path. For a moment, I can see endless fields, garlands all the way to the mountains. In my heart, I can take an axe to the cement, wait for dandelion, mallow, oat straw to rewild this place. Driving down the Sepulveda overpass, heading down the same traffic, a truck covered in dust, 2 dogs in the back and a cardboard board sign hinged to the bed. Pray for rain. Every moment, let us pray. Thank you. The night blooming datura fills the space between me and the ozone. It's the middle of the night in a heat wave and I can't sleep. This is the only time my cat will sit on my lap, wrap her tail around my thigh. It makes me feel safe. It's also the only time it's quiet. Most of my neighbors have left their windows open after running the AC all day. You would expect to see more stars tonight on this new moon, But like I said, it's the city. Still, there is Orion's belt. Pleiades, you can see Mars and Venus right now too. The fires are blazing across the valley, and rivers and mountains and homes. My cat looks at me, and I swear I hear a train, even though they don't pass close to my home. At the port of Long Beach, mega ships are received and docked daily. Floating cities that bring our shoes and electronics from the countries in which they were made. They have been known to destroy the auditory canals of sea creatures, the whales, dolphins, squids, the sonar, a metal spike. The ships will dock along the coast, which has been manipulated to receive their bounty, then dispatch the goods onto trucks, onto trains, to transport to warehouses where they will be cataloged and prepared to be shipped to your home. All along these routes are people's homes, communities, and playgrounds. The fires are blazing. I grew up along the train tracks, would flatten pennies from my collection, pretend I was lost, and following the railroad was my only way back. Each breath is a 75-inch big screen TV. Each breath, a terracotta pot. Each breath, a new pair of shoes, a window screen, balloons, confetti, plastic bags, reusable bags, water bottles, cell phone cases, dinnerware, pesticides, pocketbooks, glass jars, lipsticks and perfumes, blinds, plastic jewelry, toys, laptops, all of the electronics you can dream of. Each breath is something we need, something we want. Each breath is the train passing in the night, the crossing signals blinking, the train sounding its horn. Each breath is an empty park after a party, an empty park with whatever was left behind. Sometimes a box will fall off the train and it will be full of caverns, endless caverns of jewels, and the children will all make crowns and all royal kings and queens. Sometimes the box will be full of the ocean, stuffed inside to protect one corner of the bleached coral reef, and the children will cry, overwhelmed by what they have lost by no fault of their own. Sometimes the boxes are full of anchors and no one can pick those up. So we create monuments to their everlasting stubbornness and know that soon enough, the wild mustard will take over and eat it away bit by bit. Sometimes the mothers will find a box and know it has been waiting there for her all along. Sometimes you can hold the box up to your ear and hear the pulsing croak of the frogs near a lake. Sometimes the box will give you a way out and you won't have to justify it to anybody. But mostly, the box will be thrown away before it was ever unpacked. And these are our mountains now. It is not your job to perfect the world I've been taught, nor to hold the magnitude of a timeline of despair all alone. Though I do pray for the quiet and a greater capacity to touch the light, devour the pain, and become new again. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Very kind.
Sorry, yeah.
Ooh, that was cool sounding.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. Let me get back over here. I'm going to spotlight my video again.
That was so beautiful.
It was so beautiful.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And as Sheila knows, I really love her poetry, and it is such a joy and a treasure for us to get to hear new work no one's ever heard before. Like, what an unexpected delight. And just thank you as always for being such an authentic writer and performer. And there are just so many things I could shower Sheila with, but we're very excited to have her. And we get to hear some more poetry from our other reader right now.
That's right. We have poetry from Elizabeth Lindsey Rogers, who is the author of 2 poetry collections, The Tilt Torn Away from the Seasons, from ACRE Books 2020, and we have Nicola here from ACRE Books, and we have a Rumpus Book Club pick and a CHORD Box. Sorry, The Tilt Torn Away from the Seasons is a Rumpus Book Club pick, and she's also written the poetry collection CHORD Box from the University of Arkansas Press 2013, a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award. Her poems can be found in Boston Review, Shenandoah, Crazyhorse, Beloit Poetry Journal, Bennington Review, and elsewhere. Her creative nonfiction can also be found in the Best American Nonrequired Reading, which is a silly title because it's required reading. It's wonderful reading. And the Best American Travel Writing, the Missouri Review, Prairie Schooner, which, that's where we are, and other journals. A former Kenyon Review Fellow, she has taught at a number of colleges and universities, most recently Hendrix College, where she was the Murphy Visiting Fellow in English. She lives in Washington, D.C. with her wife and son. Okay, now let me get back over to Zoom and pin Elizabeth.
Unmute her as well.
In video. And do you happen to know, Elizabeth, do you happen to know someone who's just named Lindsey Rogers?
Yeah, that's my mom.
Okay. I was like, maybe they're, some silly.
She's trying to impersonate me.
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm impersonating her most of the time. Yeah, she's the reason that I use my full name, right, as a writer. Okay, are we good?
We're good.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me here, Christy and Alan. Thank you, Sheila, for sharing this reading with me. It was really amazing to be introduced to your work for the first time. So, and thanks for going first. I'm going to read a few poems from my new book called CHORD BOX. This is the book. It's kind of a dystopian book about the fallout of climate change. A lot of the poems take place in a not so distant future where the earth is so uninhabitable that people are trying to go elsewhere to live. And the first poem I'm going to read in the book was inspired by the first panoramic photos of Mars that were taken in 2012. Some of you may remember those. When I saw these photos for the first time, I was so obsessed with them, right, that they really just wouldn't leave my mind. And I started thinking about how the landscape of Mars reminded me of the American West, and particularly the American West before it was colonized, right? And that sort of becomes the driving metaphor for the whole book, both reckoning with the consequences of climate change and of colonialism as a system. So I'll start with that poem. It's called The Frontier, after the first 360-degree panoramic photograph of Mars. And all those years we'd pictured fire, a neon sign blinking vacancy, a world as red as that inside our bodies, but without the claustrophobia, the low ceilings of our skin. We didn't think of a sky azure only at sunset, or stones, a similar blue, scattered across the regolith. Now we know this pair of weary moons, the first one painfully slow, a pinprick taking 3 days to move across our vision. The second, Phobos, is the Western origin of fear, misshapen, mold gray. Every 4 hours, it rises like the last potato of the famine. And by now I know, as you must, what it means to lose your lakes and oceans, to creak inside the riverbed, cross its sockets and arthritic elbows, To think of rain as a tome, a form of bygone remedies. I can only dream now of what snow must do for the desert. The camera pans this world, like earth pocked by canyons. Like liberty, the surface looks aged, a green patina. Over dune and dust, the rover's tracks are the only disturbance. Like a sidewinder or wagon ruts, the trail circles and circles itself again. Again, the ground made target practice. We come in peace, curiosity says, but that's how all our ships began. As I land, I weigh next to nothing. I leap 3 times as high. But there is no canopy, no timber for an axe. Apple seeds float. There won't be saplings next year, though spring goes twice as long. Imagine a Western set, a terrain of glare and scour. The unspoken agoraphobia drives us all into the saloon. The sheriff, the unshaven rogue, the virgin in blue gingham, the Indian, and the hourglass whore. Horses are dead, whiskey still brown, but a grit in our throats. The first shot sounds in air this thin, muted as a powder puff. On cue, we turn. Picture how slowly the shutter swings, doors float open. This next poem takes the form of like a question and answer series. I'm mimicking like questions that you might see on an application form. And also sometimes you'll recognize like those standardized test questions that always trip everybody up. I use some of those in here too. This is an application form for people who want to apply to go live on Mars. And as you see, there's some very strange people. Red Planet application. When did you first become interested in space? As a baby inside bathwater, soap skidding across the surface, the prisms burst, their remnants taking a form of oil. As a teenager, I lit a match in hydrogen's mouth and listened for the pop. What qualities or skills do you have that may aid the colony? I am naturally calibrated in zeros and ones. I was born with this base 2 ability. I can spot your wedding ring no matter how lost it is in a yard. I also read bass clef. I play the cello. What experiences do you have with cultures other than your own? Despite popular belief, I don't believe China's Great Wall is visible from space. I have shared bunks with many strangers. Cotton ceilings shift above me. Any allergies, tolerances to heat, altitude, or cold? In the desert, we call the sky a star rash. We say we can sustain our bodies entirely on rock sugars and rock salts. A family history of cancer or osteoporosis? A river underground, I hear my marrow humming. Have you ever been hospitalized for a psychological condition? Now and then there is a gray day in the canyon. Walls know no noise. Sometimes you do sense molecules zinging past your eardrums. You will never see your family or friends again. Discuss. The brush of another person is more gravity than I can stand. Like a lantern's metal and paper, if you touch me, I may collapse. I have sworn off skin to skin, and not just during Lent. Inside a bubble, I prefer to drift at an arm's length. Would you be willing to participate in a 7-year strenuous training program? Someone smashed my rearview mirror. It never meant that much to me. If given 400 feet of wire fencing to enclose a sheep or goat pasture where grass is struggling, choose the shape that best provides the maximum area. Which of the following is most unlike the others? Please retype this message to prove you are not a robot. And which of the following most resembles your self-portrait? You may only choose one. Most of the major landforms and regions on the surface of Mars have actually already been named by scientists, and most of the names that they have chosen reflect places in our world. And problematically, there is a crater on the surface of Mars that is called Columbus. So if you can just think about the historical repercussions of that, right? Like, I mean, couldn't they have thought of something else to name it seriously? So this is a poem that's it's a meditation about the way that colonialism is a kind of apocalyptic force. Columbus, Mars. Just when we agreed we'd overreached, touched that ragged final edge, the next continent began drifting towards us, flow shushing its own pink name. At first dreamed up, a soap bubble's laminous prism, then the separate colors clicking into focus, then embers, shore of ash. Like the old world's temporas, it darkened the longer we threw our light upon it. Though we still claimed each crater rim, what beveled just below the surface. Each had its memory of water, rust like a bathtub ring. Red sky at night, sailor's delight. We were half drunk when we landed, cruel on our own iron taste. Out of thin air, we became toponymist, touched every place we named, alluring, transfixed, fertile, inclined to love. Who would stop us from drawing this map, too, in a girl's naked image? Hail the Santa Maria, full of plastic grace. We bottled and biled minerals, new flora, scrawled our stories on her cabin walls. In white ink, a mythic code. Tell the kids, long ago, a fleet of men let their parachutes bloom over desiccated ground. The lost blue pilot felt the wind tear at his face just before his feet touched down, his mind gone blank like sailcloth. And I will close this reading with the last poem in the book. This is a kind of prayer for climate change. It's called Agnus Dei, Mars. Less than a light year ahead, this atmosphere swirls and thickens towards equilibrium. The first conifers pricking the air, dawn a blue yonder, the robin's egg. This world that would not move, this world that once looked plain and red as sealing wax, covers its face with grass, with a noise like breath blown in a bottle. Despite the warnings, I'll step out, unhindered by tank or mask. Become too winded for words or even listening. I'll wander through white blooms of greasewood, collapse at the mountain's foot. Our drifting, they say, is genetic in nature, a destiny hardwired in ourselves or the stars. But on earth, as the story goes, my kin called out for mercy, sheep down to skin and bone. Their planet had grown too warm without passion. Everyone had to make a choice. We live now without animals, don't know how or what to confess. We only know one prayer. Make this soul a clear high note. Make the dust devils weaken. Make my cells repair. Keep me from ultraviolet arrows. Let the air I hold be sweet. Once, in place of the canary, we sent out a trio of women. A 6-lung test, red flues open. The younger 2 crossed and lived, rushed back to tell the good news. And the old one, they call her a miracle. They say she went out singing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So much. What a wonderful reading from both of you. Just stunning. Wonderful work. I'm about to unmute everyone, and that'll allow you, you can still mute yourself again if you want to be muted, but it'll allow you to unmute yourself and listen or ask a question or anything. We have time for a few questions and whatnot. So I'm about to do that. Thank you again to both of our readers, and stick around for our announcement for the next reading after the questions.
And while Alan is unmuting people, I will start us off by asking Elizabeth, people were really craving to see the cover of the book, so if you could hold that up for us. Yes, great. And did you have your other book too with you for us to see? Oh no, are you muted? She's muted for some reason. Alphabetical, I think. I don't know what's happening.
There you are. Unmute.
Okay. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is the cover of the current book. I can tell that Nicola's really happy. Right. And actually, yeah, this is my first book. Feels like a dinosaur now to me, but CHORD BOX. So that's from the University of Arkansas Press.
Great,
nice.
thank you.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say, I should have mentioned this. Sorry, I'm not fully with it. This is actually a relief map of the surface of Mars with some like cool, I don't know what's the word. It's not infrared, but like this corresponds to depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
We toyed with the idea of like naming them on the cover, but we thought that would be too cluttered. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's a great map.
Although somebody pointed out to me that like it says poems right there, and it looks like it's naming that particular spot. Yeah, instead of Columbus, right? We'll call it poem.
Good. I love the connections between what Sheila and Elizabeth read tonight, just from what I was hearing, because that's always such a magical coincidence, and it was just such a wonderful reading overall. These ideas about space and the space, not just outer space, but where we live and live through the apocalypse, which we may or may not be doing currently. I just love that we got to hear both of those. And I guess I just have praise. I don't really have any questions, but I wanted to kick us off with noting those things. But if anyone wants to ask our readers anything, please feel free.
I want to ask Sheila something. Can I do that?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just wanted to hear, because that nothing. So this is your first poetry collection that just came out.
Daughterarium, yeah.
Yeah, I just like, there's nothing quite like the energy of a first book.
Yeah.
I kind of miss it a little bit sometimes. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your journey, putting that book together. You know, did you write it over a long period of time? Was it a very short period of time? Like, what was that like?
Oh, thank you so much. And it's so nice to be able to talk about it. But yeah, Daughterarium, some of it started when I was in an undergrad writing poems. Shout out to John Dwyer. Some of these poems, maybe I started in some of our classes together or just in our communications. But then I did go get my MFA, which was really what kind of cinched my ability to form the arc of the book, and I wrote most of it then. And so a good chunk of the book happened during my MFA program, and then once that was done, I took about a year and really delved deeper into it and wrote more, and really was sending it out a lot. You know, when you send out full collections, it could get expensive. They definitely cost.
I had to like move in with somebody that year. I'm serious, because I was like, I can't pay that much rent right now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. So I was very meticulous about what contests I chose. And like, I started just narrowing because I was like, you know what, like I'm only doing first book contests because at least just narrowed the scope. And then I was like very, very particular about who was judging. So Daniel Warzeski, he is a beautiful poet and also an incredible translator. And I really loved his translations. And so I thought maybe there would be an affinity there. And so I submitted to Cleveland State, and like seriously, like the day, I don't know, you know, I was just like sitting at my coffee table. I got a call. I usually don't pick up unknown numbers because I'm that kind of person. But for some reason, like I picked it up and I didn't say anything for a minute because I was like, this is probably robocall, so I'll let the robot start talking first. But it was Carol Pagel, editor-in-chief, and she was like, oh, hello? And then I was like, oh, shit, this is a real person. And then so I started talking, and she gave me like this beautiful news about like this book being picked up. And that was just so affirming. And I was just really, I just felt so much gratitude and just really thankful for a lot of different reasons, but one, like the commitment to myself to keep going, and to see it through. And then through that process, it took about a year to get published into the book form, and Carol Pagel and the team was just like so incredible. Jasmine Ellington, who is on right now, actually is a CSU MFA student, so I want to give her a shout out. She's working on her thesis, so good luck to you. It was really, and actually the cover is my own artwork as well. So that was Carol's idea, and really I started crying. Obviously it's not hard to make me cry, but I started crying. When she recommended that we use that as the cover, it just really felt encapsulating. So
I never knew that was your own artwork. That is even more awesome. I love that both of you have these detailed stories about your covers. I mean, I think that most like literary books do have this side narrative of how did the cover come to be, but that is just so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah, and so the book of the second, or the process of the second book, Elizabeth, I don't know if you could share some wisdom there.
Sure. My first book came out in 2013, and I had finished grad school like the year before, and I had actually gone to the Kenyon Review because I was a fellow there. I was lucky enough to be a fellow there for a couple of years. So book came out, I don't know, I was pretty young, I would say, like in the scope of things. I didn't really know what it was going to be like. And also the book was picked up relatively quickly. So when the book came out, I kind of, even in the year before, I was a little bit lost, because I was like, I can't write this book again. A lot of first books, it's not true for everybody, but a lot of first books tend to have a lot of autobiographical elements. And, I had gotten the first 20 something years of my life of material and thinking about things to put that book together. And so I was like, I can't write that book again. What am I going to do? Am I ever going to write again? It was a big question. And really that first poem that I read tonight about the surface of Mars and looking at the first images, that was the first poem that I wrote for the new project, right? And once I had written that poem, I was like, okay, that was interesting. I did some experimental things in it, put it aside. And then I wrote another poem about Mars, right? And I was like, oh God, here we go. And I would send out poems to journals or whatever, and it was always those weird apocalyptic Mars poems that would get picked up, and I was like, okay, something's happening here. But the relief of the second book, I'll say, is that almost all the poems are persona, right? So even though I was channeling myself in that book, the speakers are not me. Right? And that was a welcome relief after book one, where I kind of, looked at my own navel lint, right, for a long time. So it was a big shift from the first book, is what I'm trying to say. I had to do something totally new, both kind of formally in terms of in subject, to keep writing. I think it's important to try new things.
That's so interesting. Yeah, just like as an opportunity just to commit to yourself to writing the next book too. Like you are going to continue writing, and then following kind of the trajectory of what folks are responding to. That's really
Sure. Not always, necessary, but in this case, I think, other people could see something that I couldn't really see yet, which sometimes happens. But
cool.
yeah, I think you have to keep doing new stuff in order to keep creating. And I look back at the poems in my first book, and I feel fondly towards them, right? But I can't ever be that person again, and I'll never write this book again either. People are like, "You're gonna write another book about outer space or whatever?" I'm like, no way. It's done, right? Moving on. So.
And then Jazz, it looked like you were gonna ask a question.
Yeah, like kind of just like thinking about the whole persona poem thing. Like I'm primarily nonfiction, even though I write poetry and fiction too. So like when I was first introduced to like persona poetry, it was like kind of shocking and just like intriguing having to like separate the writer from like the like poem, even though like there were elements in it that I knew to be like true about them. So I guess my question is just like, how do you get in the headspace to write a persona poem? That's just like super intriguing to me.
I would say that's interesting. Some of the poems in this book, like I had a specific character in mind. Like there's one poem narrated by like some version of Lolita, and I was thinking about in the novel Lolita, like her road trip right across the United States, and I was like trying to like mimic that in that poem. So I had her story and like all like the aura of Lolita like to drive that poem. And I had been teaching the novel at the time, so I was like really inside her as a character. So that was like a little cheat assignment I did on the side, is like write that poem when I was probably supposed to be grading papers. But in terms of like getting into the headspace, I don't know. I think because for this book, all the conditions under which the people were living were so imaginary, that really gave me permission to kind of to just decide that I was going to be somebody else. I think it's really hard when you're trying to write in the voice of a specific person who's real or a historical figure. I think that's a whole nother question, and one that has a complicated set of ethics, right? Depending on, what that person's life is like compared to yours. So I don't know, that doesn't really answer the question, but I will say that I think there's a lot of permission when, you don't have an assigned person from history that you're writing from, and you're sort of feel free to create that person as fictional.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I really like that question, just because I think there's such a political implication when women are speaking in their own poems or not speaking. And forgive me because I have read about this until my eyes, turned into scabs or whatever. But I would also say, just Jazz, your question, you talked about the separation, but I think there's also usually connection. Like there's something that person really finds resonates with them about whoever they're doing that persona poem on. Like Juliana Baggett has this, in my mind, famous dramatic monologue from Lincoln's wife, Mary Todd Lincoln. And like that's not a very common character we think of, I guess, a lot historically, but she really, invigorates her, brings her to life in that dramatic monologue. And I don't know Juliana Baggett, so I can't speak to this, but I think
She's awesome.
yeah, she is really nice. I like her, but I wouldn't be like, so she's just like Mary Todd Lincoln or whatever, but I think there probably is something that resonated between them when she was writing that. So I just wanted to add my voice to that, I suppose, but it's such a cool question. I love those craft questions.
Thanks. I kind of have no choice. It's just craft all the time the past
Because
3
you're
years.
living it right now. Grad school. Totally.
You guys know the Persona poems by I?
Yes. Alan and I actually took classes with her before.
Yeah, I'm gonna just put
Yeah.
her name into the chat in case some people are
Yes.
not familiar with her. She
Yeah.
passed a few years ago, but wow, those are some Persona poems. Is it Vice that's her collected? I think
Maybe.
I think that's correct.
Well, she has a few different books of poems that are called like after the 7 deadly
Right,
sins.
there's Cruelty, right, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I believe Vice is the collected. That's really, I have it somewhere, but oh, I do. Look at that. Collected poems. Yeah, I think if you want to do,
I would agree, Elizabeth. She's like the master of.
She's the master, and these poems are so cruel and horrible, right? But like in the best possible way.
Yeah, her first book, The Killing Floor, too. But
I think maybe going back to what Christy was saying with connections, it's interesting to explore the fact that because I took a class with I happen to know that she thought that she might be related to Custer. So when she writes like from the position of this person who she finds, and for good reason, morally repugnant, it's not that she doesn't have a connection. So Jazz, I think you opened up a really cool conversation, I guess is what I want to say.
Okay, and I remember before she died, saying she was related to Custer, and she had found the papers. But anyway, this is like our Oklahoma chapter, and unfortunately she's gone, so I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
and she also thought she was related to the Creek, but she believes, she has good reason to believe that she's related to the Creek Indians who Custer massacred. So like she had like both of those things going on in her life, and also Blackfoot and other yeah, but I do want to just jump in here for a second and say, and we can continue asking questions, but I do want to remind people that next week's reading is going to be on Wednesday, 6:30 Central, same time frame, but Wednesday, and it's going to have Kate Pollock, who is many things, but one of the things she is a poet, and she's going to be reading a new poem. Well, actually, I'm not going to spoil it. She's going to be reading some really interesting stuff. And then we're also going to have David James Poisson, who had, Habit of Animals, and he just came out with Lake Life, both by Simon & Schuster. So,
pros.
Yeah, fiction writer. Check that out. Yeah. And so we can go back to questions.
Yeah, Familiar Names. Thank you so much again for opening your series to one of ACRE's authors. Last week's was a terrific reading, and I enjoyed your reading, Christy, and I read that wonderful interview by Hannah Vanderhart about your book, and I've ordered it, and I look forward.
My gosh, thanks, Nicola. Well, I hope you like it. Thanks for ordering.
And I look forward to ordering Sheila's book as well. It was reading. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicola. We have loved having the ACRE Books authors because it's like community squared. Like we get the fire hydrant element, and then also like, hey, we're press mates, so we just have loved it, and it's great. And please, do use this as a space to connect with each other. I guess you're adult.
Series. Yep. Thank you so much.
Great
to see you, Elizabeth, and for you again.
Yeah, bye. And Nicola's right. We are way over time, but it's completely fine. And
because we're geeking out, man.
Yeah, I know. We're just like, and the beauty of the Persona poem is that you're free to leave, people. I'd say there's 10 less people than there were.
Also, just one last thing. We will try, as we always have, to put this up on YouTube. So if you want to hear this again, or if you're like Elizabeth's mom, who it says she got in, but she didn't at the same time. So
she is in limbo.
If she heard this or not, she can.
She can watch it.
Watch it.
Madness.
So Great. Maybe one more question, and then we'll go off and have our interesting thoughts to ourselves.
Just as an aside, you can kind of see over here, I'm in my kitchen. Is my home apothecary. So I am a budding herbalist, and I've been especially trying to take this time to think about our nervous systems and our immune support. So I'm also separately always really happy to talk about herbs and herbalism. Budding herbal. Yeah, that was fun. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that. But I'm always happy to talk about herbs too. So please, if you are, and I've had some of my Gaia sisters on here as well that know a lot about, herbs and nervous system is really important to check in with, especially during right now while everything is in upheaval. So really happy to be an ally to that if you so wish.
And Sheila, I just put, I think that's your email address, one of them in the, is that a good place to contact you in case someone wants to talk to you about that kind of thing, but they're feeling a little bit like, how do I put this or something of that nature? Okay.
That's a perfect.
Yeah, because I know some people understandably can be shy about that too, but it is so awesome and so generous of you to offer that. I just want to encourage everybody to come to these readings too, even if you're like making dinner and you put yourself on mute or something, because we really, want them to be just about the accessibility and being informal. I know that some people haven't come because they're like, well, I have to watch my kids or whatnot. And, I mean, I understand that, but I also want you to know, like, you don't have to ask questions just because we love that. And I'm just so excited. This went so beautifully. Beautiful work, wonderful questions.
We
What
needed
about,
this today, so
did you have anything else?
Just
for
thank you
them?
again to everyone so much.
Yeah.
And look forward to seeing the poster for the next one, as well as the YouTube for this one. Wherever you found this, on whatever social media you found it on, I'll post it there. So thank you all. Have a great, wonderful.
Good night, you guys.
Our readers.
Good night.
Oh my gosh, such wonderful readers. Good night.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Alan. Christy. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, thank you. We really loved having you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
And if you haven't yet, look through the chat and stuff if you want to, or save it before you leave. So let them go. Bye.
Bye.
Poor Elizabeth, Lindsay's mom.
Yeah.